So I'm going to put up a couple different scenarios, and I want you all to type your answers in through the chat. I'm going to put up a small scenario on screen, and sometimes it's difficult to tell if something's a true experiment or a quasi-experimental design. And so that's all I'm going to ask is this scenario an experiment or quasi-experiment? And so remember, true experiments randomly assign participants to conditions, and in these cases, often the researcher is manipulating who goes into which condition. So the researcher manipulating the independent variable. And we can tightly control for all other variables other than our independent variable of interest. So just a little review. Let's see how we do. So you can just type E or Q into the chat. So is this E for experimental or quasi? A team of researchers visits a small Kansas town hit by a tornado. They want to find out whether the disaster increased stress levels among residents. So they check pharmacy records in the town and compare prescriptions for sleeping pills. That's their dependent variable. Sleeping pills 6 months before and 6 months after the tornado. So nice, we're nailing it. This is a quasi-experimental design. And does anyone know what type of quasi-experimental design? Does this mimic the independent groups, the between groups, or the within groups design? Feel free to send your answer through the chat. Yes, Tracy's got it. It's a within groups design because they're looking at the same town from pre-tornado to post-tornado. So you could run a study like this. You could run a quasi-experimental design using a between groups framework in this case. You just look at maybe another Kansas town that's similar, that has like similar sleeping pill prescription records before, that's matched as best you can, but that didn't get hit by the tornado. And that would, do the best we could to isolate the tornado. That's the cause we want to learn about on the effect of stress levels. And we're operationalizing stress by measuring the dependent variable of sleeping pill prescriptions, which we accessed through pharmacy records. Data that already exists. We as researchers go to the pharmacy, we're doing a study. We'd love to have access to these, de-identified data for aggregate sleeping prescriptions. So we're doing a cool study here, and you all nailed that. Scenario 2. To see if lighting level increases clerical errors, Dr. Johnson gives a proofreading test to 60 company employees. Half of each group wears corrective lenses. Each employee completes a third of the proofreading under each of the following conditions: low, medium, and high illumination. The presentation order for each subject is set using a table of random numbers. So we're interested in errors conducted using low light, high light, medium light. And this is great. So you all said experiment through the chat, and that's right. How did you know that this was an experiment instead of a quasi-experiment? Feel free to either unmute or to type, whatever is more comfortable. Nice, Ashley. Yeah. So in this case, we can randomly assign participants to groups. We didn't explicitly say that, but you're picking up on this, even though it is situated within this very real context of a company testing their employees. We are still, as researchers, creating the manipulation of low, medium, high light. We're not going to different parts of the office where low light exists, where medium light exists, and where high light already exists, and measuring those outcomes. That would be a quasi-experimental design. We are manipulating that variable ourselves, giving it 3 levels, low, medium, high, randomly assigning participants to each. So nice job. True experiment, tighter to control, higher internal validity. Because if you just go to different parts of the office where there's low light, say we go to a part of the office where there's high light, maybe there is higher light there, higher illumination because it's near a window. Well, then we're also getting the effects of being near a window, highlight. Here, experiment, we can control tighter, better. That's great. So what about this situation? To assess the effect of sleep on attention, a researcher randomly assigns 10 individuals to sleep for 5 hours a night and 10 individuals to sleep for 10 hours at night. Then they do a reaction time task. Nice. Israel, Miriam, Steph, Ashley. Yep, everyone's chiming in. This is an experiment. That phrase random assignment probably gave it away. But also, if you think conceptually about what's going on here, the researcher is manipulating hours of sleep per night. We're not just looking at people who already sleep different amounts and trying to match them to a control group. No, that would be a quasi. We are determining their exact point along the independent variable, 10 hours, 5 hours of sleep. And so our independent variable here is amount of sleep per night, and our dependent variable sounds like it's a reaction time task. Are people feeling okay about this? Please let me know. Let's do one more example, and then I want people to let me know if they're feeling confident or if they need a little more practice. Here is example 4. A researcher hypothesizes that oldest siblings will be higher academic performers compared to later born children because their parents could provide them with more individualized attention. The researcher, she recruited a sample of participants of both kinds, completed an online assessment. So those are dependent variables, academic achievement, and parental involvement would be the independent variable. And you're nailing it. This is a cue. It's a quasi situation because we are not manipulating birth order. We are taking advantage of that naturally occurring variation and then doing our best to control for internal validity around that. So nice job. Good question, Israel. Would this be considered between groups? So I would say it would be. We would have, I think, 2 groups. One would be oldest siblings and one would be younger siblings. And so the independent variable, I would label it, birth order, and then it would have 2 levels, sort of first or later, something like that. So a good question, this is a quasi-experimental design, but we're still recruiting participants for the study. So that might make some of us think, we're researchers going out of our way to collect these data. So wouldn't that make it an experiment? Well, the answer would be no, it's still a quasi-experiment because even though we're going out of our way to collect a little bit of data, we're not just accessing police records that are in archives somewhere. We're still, recruiting people for our study, giving them a survey, but we are not creating the difference in that independent variable. We are not doing any manipulating. We are working with, the parents did the manipulating when they had children of different birth orders. So we're working with that variation. We're not creating the variation in the independent variable ourselves? So that's a good question that was sent through a private message. You can still recruit participants for your study and have it be a quasi-experimental design. What the key is who created that variation in the independent variable? Was it the researchers by manipulating something and then randomly assigning, or did it already exist? Nice job. Nice job. So